All right, so we're going to continue reading our book, Maniac, Magee, today. In the last few chapters that we read yesterday, Amanda had the idea that if Jeffrey was able to undo Cobble's knot, which was a huge knot, as big as a volleyball, in the flagpole rope that outside of Cobble's Corner grocery store. If he could undo that knot, then everybody in town would like him. So he worked on it all day. He was able to finally undo the knot. He won the year's worth of free pizzas, one large pizza for a week for a year, from what was now the pizza store, used to be a grocery store, Cobble's Corner. And as they were celebrating and whooping and hollering and yelling, confetti started falling down, and that confetti ended up being Amanda's treasured possession of the Encyclopedia A, which Maniac realized it was never, that the Beals were never going to be left alone if he was there, that people were always going to be angry about him being there. So he decided to leave. He felt like he had to leave, and he walked right out of town, right down the center of Hector, which splits the West End from the East End. And as John McNabb on the west side and his gang were following him on one side, Mars Bar and a gang of his friends were following them on the other side. And eventually they started yelling at each other and forgot about Maniac, and he was able to get out of town. And that's where we left off. So let's see what happens to Maniac in part 2. All right, part 2. There are vocabulary words as we go along in this section. So I've highlighted those for you, and I'm going to stop and I'm going to show you some of the definitions because some of the words are a little tricky this time. So I'm going to stop and show you those, but I did want to tell you those are going to be in that bluish purple highlight. So when you see those words, that will help you to kind of think about what they mean. Stop, and I would suggest pausing the video if you're listening to this on video, and read the word or listen to my explanation if I do give you an explanation of that word, to help you kind of figure it out, to help you when you do your assignment later. There's also some other comprehension that goes along with these chapters, but I didn't highlight anything for that. It's just basic understanding of what's going on in the book. So if you're thinking about what's going on, maybe even jotting down some notes is helpful, or going back and rereading or going back and re-listening to some of it. When you do that those comprehension questions, that might help you if you've forgotten kind of what happened in these chapters. But if you read and then you go do the comprehension, you're more likely, and the vocabulary, you're more likely to remember what those words mean and what happens in the story than if you wait and do something else in between. So you can pause this video, you can go answer questions, look at those questions, and know what, kind of have them in mind as you're listening and as you're reading along. That might help you. So just some suggestions, some ideas of things. A lot of times in class, you would have those vocabulary or the comprehension questions on your desk next to you while we read together. So you could have it open and be looking at it maybe side by side with this video, minimizing this window and having that other paper or that page with the questions on it open to help you kind of think about, and then pause the video, answer the question, those kind of things. Maybe that would help you if you're having a hard time with some of these questions, okay? They shouldn't be overwhelming. It shouldn't take you too long, 10 minutes at the most to actually answer, okay? Quick. I'm trying not to I want to get through this book, and I want you to enjoy reading it, and I'm trying not to weigh it down with too many activities that go along with it. All right, on. Chapter 22. If you were the baby buffalo at the Elmwood Park Zoo, maybe it would have gone something like this. You wake up, you have breakfast, compliments of mother's milk. You mosey on over to the lean-to. Surprise! A strange new animal in there. Bigger than you, but a lot smaller than Mom. Hair, but only on top of its head. Sitting in the straw munching on a carrot like Mom does. Every morning, same thing. You get to expect it. Some mornings you forget Mom's milk and head right over to the lean-to. The creature offers you a carrot, but all you know how to deal with is milk. You nuzzle the new, funny-smelling, hairy-headed animal. It nuzzles you back. Mom doesn't seem to mind. After the nuzzling, the stranger climbs over the fence and goes away, not to return until that night. Only one morning, the stranger falls from the fence and lies on the ground on the other side. It doesn't move. You try to poke your nose through the chain links, but you can't reach. You can only watch. Only watch. The old man was bumping through the zoo in the park pickup when he spotted the body clumped over outside the buffalo pen. He wheeled over, got out. A kid. At first, he could only stare at the body, then at the baby bison, whose large brown eye seemed to be watching them both. The mother came lumbering over, nodding as if to confirm, a kid. The kid looked terrible. His clothes were scraps, rags. Wherever his body showed through, it was bony and dirty and scratched. The two bison staring, seemed to say, well, do something. The old man gathered his own bones and muscles as best he could and managed to hoist the kid and get him up into the pickup. He laid him on the seat, bent his legs so he could close the door. He knew he should take the kid straight to the hospital or a doctor, someplace official, someplace right. But the pickup just sort of steered itself back to the band shell, and there he was, lugging the kid into the baseball equipment room. The season was over by now, but the army green burlap bags still stood ready for the next ump to call, play ball. He yanked out a couple of chest protectors and laid the kid down, careful with his head. At least he was breathing. Though it wasn't cold, it seemed as if the kid ought to be covered. So the man took his winter work jacket off the hook and laid that over him. Then he waited and watched. With trembling, dusty fingers, he touched the kid's limp, scrawny hand. He had never really touched a kid's hand before. Hey. The kid's voice was barely a squeak, but it threw him back. He dropped the hand. Where am I? The old man cleared his throat. The band shell. The band shell? In the back. Equipment room. The kid's eyes squinted, blinked. And you? What about me? Who are you? Grayson. Grayson, do I know you? He got up. Guess you do now. He went to his hot plate, heated up some water, and made some chicken noodle cup of soup. He gave it to the kid who was sitting up now. You want a spoon? He looked as though he could hardly lift the cup. He held it with both hands and gulped it down. Huh? He said. Never mind, you still hungry? The kid flopped back down. A little. Wait here. And Grayson left. 10 minutes later, he was back with a Zepp, a large. Okay, as a refresher, so in the last chapter that we read where they were outside of Cobble's Corner, they sell Zepps, and they told you what they were in that chapter. They are a hoagie-style sandwich, so it's a large, like, submarine sandwich, po' boy, if you will. That's my Louisiana coming out. They call them po' boys down in Louisiana. So it's a type of sandwich, okay? It took the kid less time to polish it off than it had taken Grayson to get it. He told the kid not to eat so fast, he'd get sick. The kid nodded. Grayson said, Where'd you get them scratches? Oh, some picker bush. What are you doing there? Hiding? Hiding? From whom? Who from? Some kids? Where? The kid pointed. Somewhere out there, some other town. He crossed his legs Indian style on the chest protector. Can I ask you a favor? Shoot. Can we go somewhere and get some butterscotch crimpets? Grayson squawked. Crimpets? You still hungry? For them I am. Grayson threw the greasy Zep wrapper into the wastebasket. I don't know, maybe you ought to do something for me first. Like what? Like tell me your name? It's Jeffrey Magee. And where do you live? Well, I did live on Sycamore Street, 728. Did? I guess I don't anymore. The old man stared. You said Sycamore? Yup. Ain't that the East End? Yup. With his fingernail, he scraped a path of dirt off the kid's forearm. He stared at it. What are you doing? The kid asked. Seeing if you was white under there? Neither spoke for a while. At last, the kid said, anything else you want to ask me? The old man shrugged. Guess not. Oh, come on, don't stop asking. I'm asked out. How about the zoo, huh? Don't you want to know what I was doing at the zoo at the buffalo pen? The old man sighed. Okay, what? I was living there. With the buffaloes? Yep, with the buffaloes. You like buffaloes? It was dark when I got there. I thought it was the deer pen. They switched the deer and the buffaloes around last month. Okay with me, I get along better with the buffaloes anyway. Well, I'll tell you one thing, the old man sniffed. You sure do smell like one. The kid laughed. They both laughed. And when they finally calmed down, the kid said, any chance of those crimpets now? Grayson reached for the pickup keys. Let's go. Okay, so there's one of the comprehension questions about this page, right? And it's asking why or why doesn't Grayson think, or why is he like questioning the fact that he lived on Sycamore Street? Because East End and Sycamore Street is where the Black people in town live, right? And he's surprised because Maniac obviously is not Black, and so he's kind of questioning it. Why are you living there if you are white? Because white people don't live on Sycamore Street in this town, in Two Mills. Chapter 23. Grayson got the crimpets all right. He bought a whole box of 3-packs with 10 packs to a box. That was 30 butterscotch crimpets. Maniac thought he must have climbed out of that buffalo pen right into heaven. Then Grayson took Maniac home. Home for the old man was the Two Mills YMCA. He lived in a room on the 3rd floor, but he didn't take Maniac up there. He took him downstairs to the locker room. He got him a towel and a cake of soap, and he told him to take off his rags and pointed the way to the showers. Maniac stayed in the shower for an hour. He hadn't done this since his last bath with the little ones. He smiled at the thought of them shrieking and splashing. The shower needle stung his scratches, but it was good. Welcome back to town stinging. When Maniac finally forced himself from the shower, he found the old man waiting with clothes, Grayson's clothes. I called the U.S. Army to haul them buffalo rags away, he said. They come in with gas masks on, and they use tongs to pick them up and put them in a steel box, and they took the box away to bury it at the bottom of the first mine shaft they come to. Maniac couldn't stop laughing. Neither could Grayson, especially when he got a load of the kid drowning in his clothes. An hour later, after a minor shopping spree, Maniac had clothes of his own. The word spree is a sustained period of unrestrained activity. So you're shopping, right? Okay, an unrestrained activity of a particular kind. Maniac had clothes of his own. For the rest of the afternoon, they cruised around town talking and eating crimpets. So, said the old man, now what are you going to do? Maniac thought it over. How about a job? I could work for the park like you. Grayson didn't answer that. He said, where are you going to think you're going to stay? Maniac's answer was prompt. The baseball room, it's perfect. A tiny idea was beginning to worm its way into Grayson's head. He could barely feel it as it brushed by all the claptrap in his brain. He ignored it. He said, what about school? All right, this word, absurd or nonsensical talk or ideas. So the claptrap is these strange ideas that are going around in his brain, okay? Maniac was silent. Some butterscotch icing had stayed behind on a wrapper. He scooped it up and mopped it from his finger, wishing it was Mrs. Beale's and not his own. Grayson, who was not comfortable asking questions, was even less comfortable waiting for answers. I said, "What about school?" Maniac turned to him. "What about it?" "You gotta go. You're a kid, ain't you?" "I'm not going." "But you gotta, don't you? They'll make you." "Not if they don't find me." The old man just looked at him for a while with a mixture of puzzlement and recognition, as though the fish he had landed might be the same one he had thrown away long before. "Why?" he said. Recognition is the action or process of recognizing or being recognized. So there's something about Maniac that he's recognizing, maybe from his own experience in his own life. Okay. Maniac felt why more than he knew why. It had to do with homes and families and schools, and how a school seems sort of like a big home, but only a day home, because then it empties out and you can't stay there at night because it's not really a home, and you could never use it as your address because an address is where you stay at night, where you walk right in the front door without knocking, where everybody talks to each other and uses the same toaster. So all the other kids would be heading for their homes, their night homes, each of them hundreds flocking from school like birds from a tree, scattering across town, each breaking off to his or her own place, each knowing exactly where to land. School, home. No, he was not going to have one without the other. "If you try and make me," he said, "I'll just start running." Grayson said nothing. What the kid said actually made him feel good, though he had no idea why. And the brushing little worm of a notion was beginning to tickle him now. He kept on driving. Notion is a conception of or a belief about something. So it's kind of like an idea. It's what you think about something, okay? It's a belief, a concept. So there's something that Grayson keeps, this worm, this little idea that he had, it's growing. He's getting something bigger. It's becoming bigger than it was when he first met Maniac. And it's going to continue to grow. Chapter 24. They got back to the band shell just as they finished the last of the crimpets. Wow, they ate 30 crimpets. Those are donuts, by the way. They're like little, not round donuts. They're like little rectangular donuts. You've probably seen something similar. I can't think of what another name for them would be. Fritters, apple fritters, or what I'm thinking of sometimes in that like rectangular shape. So they're butterscotch flavored donuts. Okay. Grayson looked at his watch. "Guess it's time to quit the job I never did today. Time for dinner too." Grayson was joking, but Maniac was serious when he piped up, "Great, where to?" Dumbfounded, the old man drove back out of the park to the nearest diner, where he sat with a cup of coffee while the boy wolfed down meatloaf and gravy, mashed potatoes, zucchini salad, and coconut custard pie. All right, dumbfounded. Greatly astonish or amaze. Okay, so it's something that you cannot believe is happening right now. Okay, you're amazed about it. Grayson had a way of jumping into a subject without warning. It was during Maniac's dessert that he abruptly said, "Them black people, they eat mashed potatoes too?" Maniac thought he was kidding and then realized that he wasn't. "Sure, Mrs. Beale used to have potatoes a lot, mashed and every other way." "Mrs. who?" "Mrs. Beale." Do you know the Beals of 728 Sycamore Street? The old man shook his head. Well, they were my family. I had a mother and a father and a little brother and sister and a sister my age and a dog. My own room, too. Grayson stared out the diner window as if digesting this information. How about meatloaf? Huh? They eat that too? Sure, meatloaf too, and peas and corn, you name it. Cake? Maniac beamed. Oh man, you kidding? Mrs. Beale makes the best cakes in the world. Grayson's eyes narrowed. Toothbrushes? They use them? Maniac fought not to smile. Absolutely. We all had our toothbrushes hanging in the bathroom. I know that, said Grayson, impatient. But is theirs the same as ours? No difference that I could see. You didn't drink out of the same glass. Absolutely, we did. This information seemed to shock the old man. Maniac laid down his fork. Grayson, they were regular people just like us. I was never in a house of theirs. Well, I'm telling you, it's the same. There's bathtubs and refrigerators and rugs and TVs and beds. Grayson was wagging his head. Ain't that something? Ain't that something? It was after dark when they got back to the baseball equipment room. The worm in Grayson's head had long since ceased to be a tiny tickle. It was now a maddening itch. As with all such itchworms, it would exit by only one route, the mouth. He said, I was thinking, maybe you want to come over to my place? This here floor is pretty hard. He tapped his foot to show how hard. The grizzled gray old park hand could never know how much Maniac was tempted or how deeply the offer touched him. Neither could Maniac explain that the bad luck he always seemed to have with the parents had led him to the conclusion that he better stick to himself. Oh, it's not so bad here, he said. Look. He lay down on the chest protectors and closed his eyes. Just like a mattress. I can feel myself dozing off already. And then, not wanting to hurt the old man's feelings, he quickly added, Hey, I told you everything about me. How about you? He pulled Grayson's coat over himself. A bedtime story. Grayson snorted. Story? I don't know no stories. Sure you do, Maniac prodded. About yourself. You know about you. Everybody has a story. Not me. Grayson was edging for the door. I ain't got no story. I ain't nobody. I work at the park. You line baseball fields? Yep, I do that. You live at the Y? You drive the park pickup? You like butterscotch crimpets? Grayson shook his head. Not as much as you. I was just eating them to be friendly so you wouldn't have to eat them all by yourself. There's another thing about you, Maniac joked. You're a liar. They both laughed. Grayson opened the door. Wait, called Maniac. What you wanted to grow up to be when you were a kid? Grayson paused in the doorway. He looked out into the night. A baseball player, he said. He turned out the light and closed the door. Chapter 25. In the morning, Grayson bought Maniac an egg McMuffin and a large orange juice. He bought the same thing for himself, so they ate breakfast together in the baseball equipment room. You sent me to bed without a story last night, Maniac kidded. Grayson brushed a yellow speck of egg from his white stubble. I don't got no stories, I told you. You wanted to be a baseball player. That ain't no story. Well, did you become one? Grayson drank half of his orange juice. Just the minors, he muttered. Maniac yelped. The minors? Could never make it to the majors. There was a frayed weariness in the old man's words, as though they had long since wore out. Grayson, the minors. Man, you must have been good. What position did you play? Grayson said, pitcher. This word, unlike all the others, was not worn out at all, but fresh and robust. It startled Maniac. It declared, I am not what you see. I am not the line laying, pickup driving, live at the Y, bean brained park hand. I am not rickety, whiskered, worm chow. I am a pitcher. All right, so that word robust, strong and healthy. Okay, unlike most of the other words that Grayson speaks, that word pitcher was strong and healthy, maybe said a little bit proudly. Maniac had sensed there was something more to the old man, and now he knew what it was. Grayson, what's your first name? The old man fidgeted. Earl. Well, call me Grayson like everybody else. He looked at the clock on the wall. Gotta go. Grayson, wait. I'm late for work. You ought to be in school. He was gone. Grayson returned at noon, bearing Zeps and sodas. There's that word again, Zeps, sandwiches, hoagies, right? Was not allowed to leave until he told Maniac one story about the minor leagues. So he told the kid about his first day in the minors with Bluefield, West Virginia in the Appalachian League, Class D. Can't get no lower than that, he told the kid. That's where you broke in. Don't have D-ball no more. He told about thumbing a ride to Bluefield, and when he got there, going up to a gas station attendant and asking which way to the ballpark. And the gas station man told him, sure, but first I got to ask you something. You're a new ball player, right? Just coming on board? And Grayson said, yep, that's right. And the man said, I thought so. Well, then you're just going to want to make your first stop over there. He pointed across the street. That there restaurant, the Blue Star, you just go right in there, and sit yourself down and tell the waitress you want the biggest steak on the menu. Anything else you want too, because it's all on the house. The Blue Star treats every new rookie to his first meal in town free. He gave a wink. They want your business. All right, there's that word again. It's also down farther on the page, but rookie is one of your words, and it means a new recruit. Okay, so somebody who's new to something. And Grayson was a rookie to the minor leagues. He was a new player coming on. Great, thought Grayson, and he did just that. Only when he got up and left, the restaurant owner came running after him down the street, all mad at Grayson for skipping out. And when Grayson told him he was a rookie, just picking up his first meal free, the owner got even madder. Seems like the gas station man was a real card and liked to welcome dumb rookies with his little practical joke. And that's how it came to be that when the Bluefield Bullets took the field that day, they did so without the services of their new pitcher, who was back in the kitchen of the Blue Star restaurant doing dishes to work off a 16-ounce steak, half a broiled chicken, and 2 pieces of rhubarb pie. After a story like that, Maniac couldn't just stay behind, so he tagged along when Grayson went back to work. He helped the whole old man raise a new fence around the children's petting farmyard. When the park superintendent came around and asked about the kid, Grayson said it was his nephew come to visit for a while. The superintendent, who managed the budget, said, we can't pay him, you know. And Grayson said, fine, no problem. And that was that. From then on, Maniac was on the job with Grayson every afternoon. They raised fences, mended fences, hauled stone, patched asphalt, painted, trimmed trees. They ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner together, sometimes in the equipment room, sometimes at a restaurant, and they spent weekends together. All the while, Grayson told baseball stories, insisting all along, I ain't got no stories. He told about the Appalachian League and the Carolina League and the Pecos Valley League and the Buckeye and the Mexican Leagues, and about the Paducah Twin Oaks and the Natchez Pelicans and the Jessup Georgia Browns and the Laredo Larets, all minor league teams, minor league baseball, sleazy hotels, sleazy buses, sleazy stadiums, sleazy fans, sleazy water buckets, curveballs and bus fumes and dreams of the majors, clean sheets, and an umpire at every base. All right, so that word sleazy, obviously, it is an adjective. It's describing the hotels, the buses, the stadiums, the fans, even the water buckets. And it means corrupt, immoral, yucky, Seedy would be another word for it, okay? Squalid, not very nice, right? Kind of gross would be a synonym, okay? Funny stories, happy stories, sad stories, or just plain baseball stories. The happiest story being the one about Willie Mays' very last at-bat in the minor leagues before he went up to the New York Giants, and immortality. Immortality means never dying. So if somebody is very famous, they kind of live on forever through their fame. Willie Mays was a very famous baseball player from a long time ago, but he was a very famous and had a lot of records within the major leagues. Okay. Well, it was old Grayson himself who had last crack at Mays in the 9th inning of a game with Indianapolis. And what did Grayson do? All he did was set the "say, hey, kid" down swinging on 3 straight curveballs. That means he struck him out. So he struck out Willie Mays. "Say, hey, kid" was Willie Mays's nickname. Okay. The saddest story was the one about the scout who came down from the Toledo Mud Hens. The Mud Hens had a roster slot, and the scout had a notion to fill it with the pitcher with the wicked curveball name of Earl Grayson. Okay, so a scout is someone who goes out and looks for new players to come on to the major league teams. In this case, the Toledo Mud Hens. Well, one short step up away from the majors. It was still a minor league team, but minor leagues have hierarchy or have variations. You get closer and closer to the majors, and they were one step away from the majors. Okay, this was Grayson's big chance, for the Mud Hens were Class AAA ball, one short step from the majors. The night before the game, Grayson spent half of it on its knees by his bed praying. And even 5 minutes before the game in the dugout, he bent down pretending to tie his shoe and closed one eye and prayed, "Please let me win this ball game," which was something, since he had never gone to a church in his life. "God must have fainted," he said to Maniac. And indeed, maybe God did. Or maybe he only listened to major leaguers, because Grayson took the mound and proceeded to pitch the flat-out awfulest game of his life. His curveball wasn't curving. His sinker wasn't sinking. His knuckler wasn't knuckling. The batters were teeing off as if it were the invasion of Normandy Beach. Before the 3rd inning was over, the score was 12-0, and Grayson was in the showers. He was 27 years old then, and that was the closest he would ever get to the big show. He hung on for 13 more years, a baseball junkie, winding up in some hot tamale league in Guantanamo, Mexico, until his curveball could no longer bend around so much as a chili pepper, and his fastball was slower than a senorita's answer. He was 40, out of baseball, and for all intents and purposes out of life. All those years in the game, and all he was fit to do was clean a restroom or sweep a floor or lay a chalk line, or far, far down the road, tell stories to a wide-eyed homeless kid. All right, we're going to stop there for today. Please do your vocabulary and your comprehension questions that go along with this section today. Thank you.